Before anything else, one honest sentence about what this is. This is not a motivational recording. There is no part of this where I raise my voice and tell you that today is the day you finally change. If that worked, it would have worked already. You have heard those recordings. You felt something. Then it wore off, usually within about 72 hours, and you were left exactly where you started, except now slightly more convinced that something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. What is wrong is the design. Almost everything you have been taught about self-discipline is built on an idea that does not survive contact with the evidence, the idea that disciplined people want it more, feel the pull less, and push through what stops you. That model is not just unhelpful. It is close to backwards. And believing it is the single biggest reason you keep failing at something you are completely capable of doing. So here is what this is instead. This is a build manual spoken out loud. Over the next hour and a bit, you are going to build a machine. 5 parts. Each part removes one specific way that behavior breaks down. When the machine is finished, it produces action on days when you feel nothing at all, which is most days, and which is exactly the problem nobody designs for. You do not need to take notes. You do not need a pen right now. Listen the whole way through once, and then go back and build. I will tell you clearly when it is time to build. One promise. There is no filler in this. Every session ends with something to construct, not something to consider. If a claim in here rests on shaky evidence, I will say so out loud rather than pretending it is settled. Because you have been sold certainty before, and it did not hold. Let us start with why it keeps failing. A quick word on how to use this, because it changes how much you get out of it. There is a specific trap with material like this, and it is worth naming before you fall into it. Listening to something about discipline produces a feeling of progress. Your brain treats the intake of a plan almost the same way it treats the execution of one. You finish, you feel sharper, you feel like something shifted. And that feeling quietly satisfies the exact urge that would otherwise have made you act. That is why so many people can describe 5 different productivity systems in detail and have never run any of them for more than 9 days. So here is the instruction. Listen through once, all the way. Do not stop to build anything on the first pass. Then, when it is done, come back to the sessions in the middle and actually write down the 5 parts of your engine. It takes about 20 minutes with a pen and a single sheet of paper. That 20 minutes is the product. Everything else is explanation for why the 20 minutes works. One more thing about scope. You are going to be tempted to apply this to your whole life at once. Training, reading, work, sleep, money, phone. Do not. Pick one behavior. One. The one you have restarted the most times, because that is where the design flaw is most exposed and where a fix will teach you the most. If you build one working engine, you will know how to build the second, and the second takes about a quarter of the effort. If you try to build 6 at once, you will get none, and you will conclude the method does not work, when what actually happened is that you overloaded it on day 1. One behavior, one engine, 60 days. That is the whole ask. Now, the diagnosis. Session 1. Discipline is not a trait. Start with the assumption you are almost certainly carrying, because until we remove it, nothing else will land. It goes something like this. There are people with strong willpower and people without it. The difference shows up in the moment of temptation. The disciplined man wants the second drink and refuses it. You want it and you take it. He is stronger. You are weaker. The gap between you is a gap in character, and closing it means becoming a fundamentally different kind of person. Almost everyone believes some version of this. It is the default model of self-control in the culture. It is also testable, and researchers have tested it. In one line of research, participants were given devices that pinged them at random points through the day. Each time, they answered a simple question. Are you experiencing a desire right now? And if so, are you trying to resist it? Now, under the standard model, the prediction is obvious. People who score high on trait self-control should report roughly the same number of temptations as everybody else, but far more successful resistance. That is what strong willpower would mean. That is not what came back. People high in self-control reported fewer temptations in the first place, not more resistance, fewer conflicts. They were not winning more fights. They were in fewer fights. Sit with that. Because it inverts the entire picture. The people you assume are grinding through resistance that you cannot handle are, on average, experiencing less resistance than you are. Not because they were born calmer, because their lives are arranged so that the conflict happens less often. Follow-up work sharpen this further, and this is the part that matters most for what you are going to build. When researchers looked at why people high in self-control get better outcomes, the mechanism turned out not to be effortful restraint at all. It was habit. Their advantage came from behaviors that ran automatically, without a decision in the moment, rather than from consciously winning battles against themselves. Which means the conscious battle is not what winning looks like. The conscious battle is what losing looks like. Every time you find yourself standing in a room negotiating with yourself about whether to do the thing, you are already in the failure state. The outcome of that negotiation is close to irrelevant, because you will not win it every day for a year, and you do not need to win it once. You need it not to happen. Let me put that in ordinary language, because it is the hinge of the entire recording. If discipline were a trait, your situation would be genuinely bleak. You would be stuck trying to become somebody else by force of will, using the exact faculty that keeps failing you. That is a closed loop. It is the loop most people spend a decade inside, restarting, failing, and concluding a little more firmly each time that they are simply not one of the disciplined ones. But if disciplined people are mostly people who face fewer conflicts, then discipline is not a personal quality at all. It is an arrangement. It is a set of decisions made in advance by somebody calm, which removes the need for decisions later by somebody tired. And an arrangement is buildable. This week, it does not require you to want it more. It does not care how you feel while you are doing it. Here is the sentence I want you to keep from this session. Willpower is what you spend when your system is not built yet. That is not a poetic line. It is a diagnostic. Every time you notice yourself burning effort to force a behavior, that effort is information. It is telling you there is a missing piece of structure at that exact point in your day. Strain is not a sign of virtue. Strain is a design report. Now, an important qualification, because I said I would tell you where the ground is firm and where it is soft. The experience sampling work I described is well conducted and has been supported by related research, and the finding about habit rather than restraint has held up in follow-up studies. I would call this solid, but it is psychology, not physics. Effects vary between people and contexts. What I am confident about is the direction, not a precise number, and you should treat anyone who gives you a precise number here with suspicion. What does this actually change for you, practically, starting today? It changes the question you ask. Stop asking, how do I become more disciplined? That question has no usable answer, which is precisely why you have been asking it for years without ever getting one. Ask this instead. Where in my day does the outcome depend on how I feel? Every one of those points is a design flaw. Most people have 4 or 5. They are specific, they are findable, and they are fixable. Fix them and you will look, from the outside, exactly like the people you assumed were stronger than you. Not because you became stronger, because you stopped needing to be. That is the reframe. Now let me clear out 3 things you have probably been sold that are not true. Before I do, one small exercise, and this one is worth actually doing. Think of the habit you have restarted the most times in your life. Not the most important one, the one with the highest restart count. For most people, it is training, or reading, or getting up earlier, or focused work in the morning. Now, instead of asking why you failed, which will just produce the word lazy, do something more useful. Try to reconstruct the last 3 times it stopped. Not the reasons you gave other people. The actual day, what was happening, what time it was, and what you did instead. Most people, doing this honestly for the first time, notice something uncomfortable. The collapses are not random. They cluster. It is the same kind of Tuesday, the same hour, the same specific obstacle over and over, across years and across completely different goals. That repetition is the most valuable information you have about yourself, and almost nobody ever looks at it, because looking at it feels like dwelling on failure. It is not. A mechanic who says your car stopped working has told you nothing. A mechanic who says the same seal fails every time the engine gets hot has told you everything. You are looking for the seal. Hold whatever you found. In 2 sessions from now, I am going to give you 4 specific failure points, and I want you to already have the raw material in your head so you can recognize yours immediately rather than picking the one that sounds most like a character flaw. That is the whole diagnosis phase. Discipline is arrangement, not character. Strain is a design report, and your collapses repeat, which means they are structural. Now, the 3 ideas this recording refuses to use. Session 2. 3 things that are not true. This session exists for one reason. You should know what a method is not built on before you trust what it is built on. Anybody can assert. Fewer people will tell you where the ground is soft, and you have almost certainly failed at something using one of these 3 ideas and concluded that the failure was yours. The first one, 21 days to build a habit. This number is everywhere, and it comes from nowhere. Its origin is an observation by a plastic surgeon in the 1960s who noticed that his patients seemed to take about 21 days to adjust to a change in their appearance. That is it. That was never a study of habit formation. It was never a finding about you or about behavior. When habit formation was actually measured properly, with participants adopting a new daily behavior and being tracked until it became automatic, the median came out at around 66 days. But the median is the least interesting part of that result. The range ran from 18 days to 254 days. Think about what a 14-fold spread means. It means no schedule can tell you when your habit will become automatic. It means the number is useless as a promise and actively harmful as an expectation. Because if you are told 21 days and you happen to be a 140-day case, then on day 22, you will conclude that something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You are handed a fake deadline. So this recording gives you no countdown. You will track repetitions completed, never days elapsed, and you will assume it takes longer than you were told. The second idea, willpower as a fuel tank that empties. You have heard this one. Self-control is a limited resource. It drains as you use it, and it gets restored by rest and food. It is a satisfying model because it explains something real. You genuinely are worse at resisting things at 10 at night than you are at 8 in the morning. The problem is that when laboratories coordinated to test this effect at scale, with many labs running one agreed protocol, pre-registered in advance, the effect did not appear reliably. The debate is not completely closed, and some researchers still defend versions of the theory. But the honest position today is this: it is contested, and you should not build anything important on it. Which raises the obvious question. If the tank is not real, why are you actually worse at 10 at night? There are better explanations, and they are more useful because they point at things you can change. By 10 at night, you have accumulated far more open decisions than you had at 8 in the morning. You are further in time from the moment you set the intention, so the intention has less grip. Your environment has shifted from the one you designed to the one you collapse in, and those 2 rooms have very different defaults. And the perceived cost of skipping has dropped, because the day is nearly over anyway, and tomorrow still looks clean. None of that requires a depleting fuel tank. All of it is fixable by design. So in this method, you will never be told to ration your willpower or protect it for later. You will be told to reduce the number of moments that require it at all. The third idea, the dopamine detox. The story goes like this. Modern life floods you with dopamine. Your receptors get dulled. Ordinary effort stops feeling rewarding, and the cure is a period of total abstinence from stimulation to reset your baseline. Now, the underlying concern here is completely real, and I do not want to talk you out of it. Cheap, high-frequency stimulation genuinely does compete with slow, effortful work. If the first thing you touch every morning is a screen full of fast rewards, you have taught yourself something about what to expect from a day, and that lesson does carry. But the mechanism, as usually described, is not how the biology works. Dopamine is not a pleasure fluid that fills up and drains away. It is involved in motivation, prediction, and learning in ways that do not map onto the detox story at all. You cannot fast from a neurotransmitter that your brain requires in order to move your hand. And the practical damage of the wrong mechanism is real. The detox framing turns this into an event. A heroic 7-day cleanse with a start date and a finish line, when the actual solution is structural and permanent and much less dramatic. People do the week, feel excellent, return to an entirely unchanged environment, and are back inside a fortnight, now with the added belief that they tried the strongest available intervention and it did not hold. So in session 6, we are going to deal with stimulation as an environment problem rather than a purity problem. You will change where your phone physically lives and how many steps stand between you and the thing that takes your evenings. That works while you are not paying attention, which is the only kind of solution worth building. Why did I spend a whole session on things that are not true? Because of what those 3 ideas have in common. Every one of them puts the fault inside you and puts the solution inside your intentions. 21 Days says, if you are still failing on day 30, you lack persistence. The fuel tank says, if you gave in at 10 at night, you spent your willpower carelessly. The detox says, if you cannot focus, your appetite for stimulation is the problem, and you need to purify it. All 3 point the finger at the same place, your character, and all 3 prescribe the same medicine. Try harder, want it more, be a better person. That is not just wrong. It is the exact prescription that has failed you every single time you have taken it, and each failure has made the next attempt slightly harder because the evidence file against yourself keeps growing. So clear all of it out. You were handed a fake deadline. You were handed a fuel gauge for a tank that may not exist. You were handed a cleanse for a chemical that does not work that way. And then you were told the real problem was that you did not want it enough. Everything from here forward does the opposite. It puts the fault in the design and the solution in the arrangement. One quick thing before we continue. If you're enjoying this kind of thinking, I've put together a completely free reading list of 25 books that can change how you think, work, and decide. I went through more than 100 books to make the list, and you can get it completely free through the link in the description. Now, back to the system. Not because that is kinder, although it is, but because it is the version that actually produces behavior. Now, if the problem is design, we need to know exactly what breaks, not vaguely, specifically. Because a mechanic who says the car stopped working has told you nothing. There are 4 failure points. Nearly every collapse you have ever experienced is one of these, or 2 of them in sequence. And once you know which one is yours, the fix stops being mysterious. Session 3. The 4 failure points. Here is the mistake almost everybody makes after a habit collapses. They treat it as one event with one cause, and the cause is usually themselves. I got lazy. I lost motivation. I am just not a consistent person. That diagnosis is useless because it does not point at anything you can change. It is the mechanic saying the car stopped working. True, unhelpful, and not what you are paying for. Behavior breaks at 4 identifiable joints. Let me walk you through the whole sequence first, so you can see where each one sits. For any behavior to actually happen and keep happening, 4 things have to work in order. First, you form an intention. You decide to do the thing. Second, the moment arrives, and you recognize it as the moment. Third, you begin. And fourth, you do it again tomorrow. Intention, cue, start, repeat. Failure point 1 sits at the intention. The plan was built too big, so it only runs on a good day. Failure point 2 sits at the cue. There is no fixed when and where, so the moment never clearly arrives. Failure point 3 sits at the start. There are too many easy ways out, so stopping is cheaper than beginning. And failure point 4 sits at the repeat. One miss gets interpreted as total failure, so a single missed day becomes a gap, and the gap ends it. 4 joints, 4 failures, and each one has a matching part in the machine you are about to build. Let me take them one at a time, because you need to be able to recognize yours precisely. Failure point 1. The plan only works on a good day. You designed for the version of you who slept well, had a clear evening, and felt like it. Be honest about how often that person actually shows up. For most people, it is about twice a week. The tell is that your plan has exactly one size: 45 minutes or nothing. Full session or skip. 2 hours of deep work or the day was a write-off. So when your actual Tuesday does not accommodate the full version, you have no smaller option available, and the day becomes a 0. And here is the part people miss. A 0 is not a rest day. A rest day is planned. A 0 is the first day of the gap that ends the entire thing. Failure point 2. There is no fixed when and where. Listen to the shape of these. I will read more this year. I will train 4 times a week. I will work on it in the evenings. None of those specify a moment. Not one. Which means every single day contains a fresh negotiation about whether now is the right time, and that negotiation happens with somebody tired who has other options and no obligation. This is, by a wide margin, the highest leverage fix in this entire recording, and it also has the strongest evidence behind it of anything I will tell you. I will give you the numbers in session 5 because they are genuinely striking, and I want you to have them properly. For now, just notice whether you can state, out loud, the exact time and place your behavior happens. If you cannot, that is your joint. Failure point 3. Too many exits. An exit is anything that makes stopping easy. The phone within arm's reach. The alarm you did not set. The bag you did not pack. The plan nobody else knows about. The rule with an exception built into it from the very beginning. Here is why exits are so dangerous. On a good day, you walk past every single one of them and never notice they were there. They cost you nothing, so they never come to your attention. But on a bad day, and there will be bad days, that part is not negotiable. You only need one. Most people respond to this by resolving to want it more. Understand what that actually commits you to. You have to win every single day. The architecture only has to win once. That is not a fight you lose because you are weak. It is a fight with arithmetic that guarantees the outcome over a long enough period. Failure point 4. One miss becomes the end. This one does the most damage, and it is almost invisible while it is happening. You miss a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. Work ran late. Then on Wednesday, you feel a small, very specific discomfort. The streak is broken. The record has a mark on it. The thing you were building is no longer clean. And rather than sit with that discomfort, some part of you quietly decides it would be easier to stop completely and restart properly on Monday. Monday is where habits go to be quietly abandoned. You have restarted on a Monday many times. Now, here is what makes this failure point genuinely cruel. And it is the most useful single fact in this recording. In the same research that produced the 66-day figure, the investigators also looked at what happened when people missed a day. Missing a single opportunity did not meaningfully affect the habit formation process. Read that again in your head. One miss costs you almost nothing mechanically. The curve barely moves. It only becomes fatal because of what you decide it means. So memorize this asymmetry, because you will need it at some point in the next few weeks. A missed day costs you one day. A missed week costs you the identity. And rebuilding an identity takes months, not days. The gap is the enemy, never the miss. Now, one last thing about these 4, and it is the most common real-world pattern. The typical collapse is not one failure point. It is 1 and 4, back to back. Your plan was too big, which is failure point 1, so a mediocre Tuesday produced a 0. The 0 triggered all or nothing thinking, which is failure point 4, and turned one missed day into a 9-day gap. By day 9, the identity is gone, and starting again genuinely does feel like starting from scratch, because it is. Notice what is absent from that sequence. At no point did you need to be lazy. At no point did you need to lack motivation. Both steps are pure design failures, and both are fixed by parts you are about to build. So, which one is yours? Take the collapses you reconstructed earlier and match them. If 2 seem to tie, take the lower number, because earlier joints cause later ones. That is your primary failure point. Build its matching part first, and build it carefully. Session 4. The first part of the machine. The floor. Ask somebody what their training plan is, and they will describe the full session. Now ask them what it is on a day when they slept 4 hours, work overran, and something went wrong at home. You will get a blank look. There is no answer, because no version was ever designed for that day. So on that day, they do nothing, and the nothing is where it ends. Here is the fix, and it is the simplest thing in this entire recording. Every behavior in your machine gets 2 versions. The ceiling is your good day version. The full session, the 2 hours, the proper effort. There is nothing wrong with the ceiling. It is where most of your actual progress comes from, and you will hit it more often than you expect. The floor is the smallest unit that still counts as having done it. 1 page, 1 set, 5 minutes. Opening the document and writing a single line. And here is the part people refuse to accept, which is exactly why they keep failing. Both of those are the habit, not the ceiling with an apology attached. Both. Now, how do you set a floor correctly? There is one rule, and almost everybody breaks it. If your floor sounds impressive, it is too big. A correct floor should feel slightly embarrassing to say out loud. That embarrassment is the signal. It means you have set it low enough that it will genuinely survive the worst day of your month. 20 minutes is not a floor. That is a reduced ceiling, and on a truly bad day, you will skip it. Put on your shoes and walk to the end of the road. That is a floor. 4 rules for the floor. These matter more than the concept. Rule 1. The floor is not optional. On bad days, you do not skip. You drop. That is the entire mechanism, and it only works if the floor is genuinely non-negotiable, which in turn requires it to be small enough that refusing it would be absurd. If you can construct a plausible reason to skip your floor is too big. Go smaller. Rule 2. Never renegotiate the floor at night. Decide it once, in advance, while you are calm. The version of you at 11 at night on a hard day is not authorized to redefine it. He has different priorities. He has a shorter time horizon. And on this particular question, he is not on your side. Rule 3. Hitting the floor is a win, not a failure. This is where people sabotage themselves without realizing it. They hit the floor, feel like they cheated, and log it mentally as a failure, which recreates exactly the all or nothing problem the floor was designed to solve. So understand what the floor actually protects. It is not protecting your progress. 5 minutes does not build much, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. It is protecting the identity, the unbroken sequence of days on which you are a person who does this. That identity is the asset. Progress is downstream of it, and progress can wait. Rule 4. Do not raise the floor for 30 days. Almost everybody raises it in week 1, because on good days the floor feels far too easy. Then a bad day arrives. The raised floor is now too big for it, and you have rebuilt the original problem with your own hands. Let me make this concrete, because abstract advice about floors is easy to agree with and hard to apply. Take training. Ceiling, a full hour at the gym, 4 days a week. Floor, put on your kit and do 10 minutes of anything. Not a workout. 10 minutes. Take writing. Ceiling, 90 minutes of focused work. Floor, open the document and write 1 sentence. It does not have to be a good sentence. It does not have to survive. Take reading. Ceiling, 30 pages. Floor, 1 page. Standing up, if that is what it takes. Take a morning routine. Ceiling, up at 6, full sequence, out the door by 7. Floor, get up at your set time and put your feet on the floor within 30 seconds. That is it. That is the whole floor. Now notice something about all 4 of those. In every case, the floor is essentially the act of starting. And that is not an accident. Starting is where the resistance actually lies. Once you are 10 minutes in, the ceiling frequently happens on its own, without any additional decision, because the hardest part is already behind you. Which brings me to the one way the floor genuinely fails, and I want to be straight with you about it. The failure is using the floor on days when you could have hit the ceiling. The floor is an insurance policy, not a strategy. If you are on the floor more than about 1/3 of the time, that is not a floor problem. That is a signal that your ceiling is set too high for your actual life, and the fix is to lower the ceiling, not to raise the floor. That is part 1. Now, part 2, and this is the one with the numbers. Before I move on, this is a build point. Remember I said I would tell you clearly. When you come back for the second pass, here is what you write down for the floor. First, write your ceiling. The full version, on a good day, stated specifically enough that you would know whether you hit it. Second, write your floor, the smallest unit that still counts. Then, have it. Then, if you can still say it out loud without wincing slightly, have it again. Third, and this is the test, say the floor out loud. If you feel a small flicker of embarrassment, it is correct. If it sounds respectable, it is still too big, and it will not survive February. And one calibration point that helps people enormously. Do not ask what is a reasonable minimum. Ask this instead. What could I do on the single worst day I have had in the last year? A day with illness, or a family situation, or 14 hours of work. Whatever you could still have done on that specific day is your floor. Most people, when they run that test honestly, end up with something between 2 and 10 minutes. That feels absurd. It feels like it cannot possibly be enough. But run the arithmetic over a month. A ceiling-only plan that collapses on the first bad day produces perhaps 5 sessions and then nothing. A floor and ceiling plan produces 10 full sessions and 6 small ones because it never stopped. Twice the real work from a plan that demanded less on any individual day. That is not a trick. That is just what happens when you remove the zero. Session 5. The trigger. This is the highest leverage 20 minutes in this recording, and it has more evidence behind it than anything else I will tell you. So I want you to actually listen to this one rather than letting it wash over you. Here is the problem it solves. An intention like I am going to train more contains no moment. It floats. It has no anchor in time or in space. And because it floats, every single day it has to compete in real time against whatever else is available. And it competes badly because the alternatives are concrete and immediate and right in front of you, and it is not. The fix is to attach the behavior to a specific cue in writing in advance. The format is this. If a specific cue happens, then I do a specific action. That is it. That is the whole tool. It sounds almost too simple to matter, so let me give you the evidence, because the evidence is what makes people actually do it. Plans written in this if-then format have been tested across a very large body of research. A major review pulled together somewhere around 94 independent tests covering exercise, diet, study habits, medical adherence, and a long list of other behaviors. Writing a plan in this specific format produced a medium to large improvement in whether people actually followed through, compared with holding exactly the same goal without one. Same goal, same person, same intention. The only difference is a written sentence specifying when and where. This is among the most reliably replicated findings in behavior change research. And it costs you about 20 minutes, once. Why does it work when a resolution does not? Because it hands the decision over to the environment. You are no longer deciding whether to act. You are responding to a cue that you pre-committed to, back when you were calm and thinking clearly. The moment arrives, and the response is already specified. There is no negotiation, because the negotiation already happened, at a time when you were the one likely to win it. Now, here is why most people never get any of this benefit, despite having heard something like it before. They think it, and they do not write it. Thinking I will go at 6 is a general intention wearing a costume. The effect in the research comes from a specific cue, a specific response, and the act of committing it to paper. Write it down, or you do not have one. I realize that sounds fussy. The research is fussy about it, and this is the one place where I would ask you to just follow the instruction. 3 rules for writing triggers. Rule 1. The cue must be unmissable. Good cues are a clock time, a place you will definitely be, or the completion of something you already do every day without fail. Bad cues are in the morning, after work, and when I get a chance. Here is the test. If you can picture the day passing without the cue clearly occurring, it is not a cue. And the strongest cues of all are attached to routines that already run without your input. After I put the coffee on. After I close my laptop. After I brush my teeth. Those things happen whether you are motivated or not, which is precisely the point. Rule 2, and this is the one that ruins otherwise excellent triggers. The then is your floor. Never your ceiling. People write the ceiling into it. If it is 6 in the evening, then I train for an hour. Now watch what happens. That trigger only fires on days when you can commit a full hour. Every other day it simply does not apply, and you are straight back into failure point 1. Write the floor instead. If it is 6 in the evening, then I put on my kit and start. Once you have started, the ceiling usually takes care of itself. But the trigger's only job is to get you across the threshold, nothing more. Do not overload it. Rule 3. Write a second trigger for the obstacle. Take the thing that most often derails this specific behavior and write a trigger for that too. If a meeting runs past 6, then I do the floor version at 9 instead. If I wake up late, then I do the floor before I open my laptop. If I am traveling, then the floor is whatever I can do inside a hotel room. This one addition is what separates a plan that survives a normal week from one that only survives an ideal week. And normal weeks are the only kind that exist. Let me give you a few complete examples so you can hear the shape of a good one. If it is 6:40 in the morning and I am in the kitchen, then I put on my shoes and leave. If I sit down at my desk, then I write one sentence before I check anything else. If I get into bed, then I read one page before anything else. If I miss a day, then the next session is the floor, not a double. Second build point. Here is what you write down for the trigger. Write your primary trigger. If a specific cue, then my floor action. Say it out loud once when you have written it, because hearing it will immediately expose a vague cue. Then name the obstacle that most often derails this behavior. You already know what it is. You probably named it during the exercise in session 1. Then write your obstacle trigger. If that obstacle happens, then this fallback. 2 sentences. That is the entire part. And if you want to keep going after this recording, I've made something for exactly that. It's a completely free reading list of 25 books I've selected for the ideas underneath them: psychology, focus, performance, and how people actually work. It's linked in the description. You don't need it to use this system, but it's there if you want the next layer. Before I move on, one honest caveat, because I promise to flag where the ground is softer. The research on if-then plans is strong and well replicated, but effect sizes vary a lot depending on the behavior and the person. It works better for behaviors you already want to do and are failing to start, and less well for behaviors you fundamentally do not want to do at all. If you are using this on something you have no real interest in, the trigger will not save you, and the honest answer is that you should probably question the goal rather than reinforce the plan. Also, triggers decay if the cue changes. If you attach your training to leaving the office and then you start working from home, the trigger silently stops firing and you will not notice for 2 weeks. So whenever your routine changes shape, check your cues. That is a 5-minute maintenance job that saves entire habits. Now, part 3. This is the one that does the most work while you are not paying attention. Session 6. The environment. Remember the finding from session 1. People high in self-control face fewer conflicts, not more successful resistances. This session is how that gets engineered. It is not a mindset shift. It is furniture. Let me start with what an exit actually is, because naming them is most of the work. An exit is anything that makes stopping easier than continuing. I listed some earlier. Now let me tell you what each one actually costs you, because the costs are not obvious. Your phone within arm's reach. The cost is not the time you spend on it. The cost is that resisting it consumes the exact attention you are about to use on the task. There is research suggesting that the mere presence of a phone within sight reduces available cognitive capacity, even when it is face down and switched off, even when people report no urge to check it. The effect sizes are debated, and I will not overstate it. But the direction is consistent with everything else we know, and the fix costs you nothing, so the expected value is obviously positive. Your kit not packed the night before. The cost is that it adds 4 small decisions to a moment that has no capacity for them. Nobody knowing your plan. The cost is that stopping is completely free. There is no friction at all on the exit, working in the room you relax in. The cost is that the environment is cueing the wrong behavior the entire time you are in it. No fixed stop time. The cost is that open-ended work is harder to begin and impossible to properly rest after. You have exactly 2 levers here. They are the same lever pointed in opposite directions. Lever 1. Add friction to the wrong behavior. Every additional step between you and the thing that takes your evenings reduces how often you do it. Not because the step is hard, because friction reliably reduces frequency. This is one of the most robust findings in applied behavioral science, demonstrated across food choice, energy use, savings behavior, and a long list of other domains. It is also the reason shops put confectionery at the till and not in the back corner. You do not need willpower for this. You need one physical change, made once. Lever 2. Remove friction from the right behavior. Same principle, reversed. Bag packed and by the door. Document already open when you sit down. 1 tab. Everything you need within reach before the moment arrives, so that starting requires no setup at all. Now let me give you the audit. This takes about an hour, and you only do it once. Physically go to the place where the behavior is meant to happen. Stand there. Do not do this from a chair in another room, because you will imagine an idealized version of the space rather than seeing the actual one. Then ask 5 questions, in this order. What is within arm's reach that is not the task? Move it to another room. Not a drawer, another room. A drawer is a 2-second exit. What decision is still unmade at the moment of starting? Make it now instead. What you are wearing. What you are doing first. What done looks like. Question 3. What could interrupt this? Notifications off. Door closed. Phone elsewhere, and be specific, because the interruption you get is rarely the one you imagined. Question 4. Who would notice if I stopped tomorrow? If the answer is nobody, tell one person today. This is not about accountability in the motivational sense, and it is not about pressure. It is that a stopping cost of exactly 0 is an exit the size of a doorway. One person knowing raises the cost from nothing to something, and something is all you need. Question 5. When does this end? Set a stop time, not just a start time. Open-ended work is harder to begin because some part of you knows it could swallow the whole evening, and it is impossible to rest properly afterwards because it never formally finished. Now, the rule that makes all of this permanent. If a rule requires willpower to follow, it is a badly designed rule. Good rules work while you are not paying attention. Compare these two. I will not scroll in bed. That needs willpower every single night for the rest of your life, and you have to win every time. The phone charges in the kitchen? That needs willpower exactly once, on the day you buy a second charger. Apply that test to everything you are currently trying to enforce through resolve. Most of it converts into a one-time physical change, and the conversion is almost always cheaper than the fight you have been having. One warning about what to expect, because this part surprises people. Environment changes feel underwhelming when you make them. Moving a charger does not feel like transformation. Packing a bag does not feel like discipline. That is the point. The effect shows up as an absence. It arrives in the form of a fight that did not happen. And you will not notice an absence directly because there is nothing there to notice. You will only notice 3 weeks later, in passing, that you have stopped losing evenings, and you will probably not connect it to the charger. So do not judge these changes by how they feel on the day you make them. Judge them by your record at the end of the month. Third build point. Here is what you write down for the environment. Stand in the room. Write down every exit you can see. Most people find between 4 and 7. Close the 3 cheapest ones today. Physical moves, not resolutions. If it cannot be done in the next hour, it is not one of your 3. Tell one person what you are doing and when. Write your stop time. That is the part. Notice that nothing in it involves trying harder, and that is deliberate. Now, part 4. This one seems administrative, and it is not. It is the part that keeps you from quitting during the stretch where nothing appears to be working. Session 7, the ledger. Here is the problem it solves. Your memory of how consistent you have been is not evidence. It is a mood report, and it is wrong in a predictable direction. Ask somebody in week 5 how it is going, and you will get an answer generated almost entirely from how the last 2 days went. 2 good days, really well actually. 1 missed day, badly, I keep slipping. The actual record, 19 sessions out of 22, never enters the conversation because they do not have it. It does not exist anywhere except as an impression, and impressions are made of the most recent thing that happened. This matters far more than it sounds, and here is why. In the first 2 months, there are no visible results. Nothing in the mirror. Nothing in your bank account. Nobody has commented. And in the complete absence of external evidence, your feeling about your progress becomes your progress. It is the only reading you have. And your feeling on any given Tuesday is not a reliable instrument. The ledger replaces that with something you cannot argue with. 3 columns, not more. An elaborate tracker is a project, and projects get abandoned. Column 1, the date. Every day, including the days you missed, especially those. Column 2, 1 character. C for ceiling, F for floor, or a dash for missed. Column 3, a note, and only on missed days. What actually got in the way, 4 words is plenty. That is it. 10 seconds a day. And if it takes you longer than that, you will stop doing it. And a tracker you abandoned is worse than no tracker, because it becomes evidence of a second failure sitting on your desk. Now, why do you record the misses? Most people only log successes, because logging only successes turns the ledger into a trophy cabinet. And then a miss arrives, and there is nowhere to put it. So it sits outside the system as pure failure, and the all-or-nothing logic from failure point 4 takes over immediately. Logging the miss does 2 things. It keeps the record continuous. A bad day becomes a mark within the system rather than the end of it, which sounds like a small psychological distinction and is actually the whole difference between a gap and a dip. And the 4-word note is your diagnostic data. 3 misses with the same note is not bad luck. That is a design flaw with a name, and now you can fix it precisely instead of guessing. Which brings me to the weekly review. 5 minutes, same time each week, written into your calendar like any other trigger. Count your ceilings, your floors, and your misses. Then read your miss notes and ask one question. Is there a pattern? If the same obstacle shows up twice, write a new obstacle trigger for it that week. Those 5 minutes are where the machine actually improves. Skip them and you will run the same broken part for months without ever identifying it. Let me be clear about what the ledger is not for. It is not for motivation. It is not gamification. Streak apps that make you feel good about a number have the causality backwards, and they collapse badly on the day the number resets, which is precisely the day you needed support. The ledger has 2 jobs. It is evidence against your own memory on the day you are convinced you are failing, and it converts a miss from a verdict about your character into a data point with a note attached. One warning, because this is where people who like systems go wrong. Do not build a beautiful tracking system. No elaborate dashboard. No color-coded spreadsheet. No app with analytics and streak badges and a weekly report. That is failure point 3 wearing a productivity costume. Building the tracker feels like doing the work. It is far more pleasant than the work, and it produces exactly nothing. 10 seconds. 3 columns. On paper if you can, because paper does not contain anything else. 4th build point. Where does your ledger live? Pick one place, visible, no app required. When is your weekly review? A specific day and a specific hour, written down. And log today, even if today was a miss. Especially if today was a miss. Now, part 5. And this is the one that decides whether the other 4 survive. Session 8, the return. Everything up to this point was built to prevent failure. This part accepts it. You are going to miss days. Everyone does. Something will go wrong. Illness, work, travel. A bad stretch that has nothing at all to do with discipline. The machine cannot prevent that, and it should not try. What it can do is make sure a missed day stays a missed day instead of becoming a missed month. Recall the finding I gave you in session 3, because now it becomes actionable. In the research on habit formation, missing a single opportunity did not meaningfully derail the process. So if one miss costs almost nothing, why do so many habits end on a missed day? Because of what happens next. And there is a name for it in the research literature. It is called the abstinence violation effect. The pattern is this. Somebody sets an absolute standard. They break it, usually by a small amount. And rather than the small breach producing a small correction, it produces a complete collapse of the entire effort. The classic demonstration involves people who are restricting their eating. Give them a small amount of the thing they were avoiding, and instead of eating slightly less for the rest of the day, they frequently eat considerably more. The reasoning underneath is something like, the standard is already broken, so the rest of today does not count. You have run this exact pattern. Almost everybody has. You miss Tuesday, and by Wednesday afternoon, some quiet part of you has decided that this week is a write-off, and you will begin again properly on Monday. The miss did not end it. The interpretation of the miss ended it. And notice that the interpretation depends entirely on having set an absolute standard, perfect or nothing, which is why the floor from session 4 is not just a practical convenience. It is structural protection against this specific pattern. If a bad day has a legitimate small version, the standard never breaks, so there is nothing to violate, and the collapse has nothing to attach itself to. Now, the protocol. 6 rules. Write them down now while you are calm, Because on the day you need them, you will be looking for reasons rather than instructions, and you will find them. Rule 1. Return the same day if any part of it is left. Miss the morning session. The floor still counts at 9 at night. The day is not spent until it is actually over. This one rule alone prevents an enormous proportion of gaps. Rule 2. Return at the floor, never the ceiling. The comeback day is not the day to prove anything. It is the day to reestablish the sequence. Floor only. The ceiling can wait until tomorrow, and it will still be there. Rule 3. Never double up to make up. 2 sessions to compensate for 1 missed session is punishment training. It does not survive contact with the second week. And worse, it teaches you that missing creates a debt, which makes the next miss more frightening, which makes a gap more likely, not less. Rule 4. Do not audit yourself first. The urge to sit down and analyze exactly why you missed before resuming is a delay tactic wearing responsibility as a costume. It feels mature. It is avoidance. Resume first. Analyze at the weekly review for 5 minutes with the ledger in front of you and the emotion out of it. Rule 5. Skip the self-criticism. And I want to give you the reason, because this one sounds soft and it is not. Research on procrastination has found that students who forgave themselves for an initial episode of putting something off went on to procrastinate less on subsequent occasions than students who were harder on themselves. Related work links self-compassion to better recovery from setbacks, generally. The mechanism is straightforward once you see it. If returning to the task means returning to a session of feeling bad about yourself, then the task itself becomes something to avoid. You have attached a cost to it that was not there before, and then you will avoid it, and you will experience that avoidance as further proof that you are undisciplined, and the file against yourself grows again. So this is not permission. It is a recognition that the criticism you are about to deliver makes the next miss more likely, not less. You are not being kind to yourself. You are removing a penalty you attach to the behavior you are trying to build. I will be honest about the evidence here as well. This literature is smaller than the research on if-then plans, and the effects are moderate rather than dramatic. Treat it as well supported rather than settled. But given that the alternative costs you something and buys you nothing, the practical call is not close. Rule 6. Expect a second break and plan for it now. The first return is usually fine. Motivation is available, the miss is fresh, and the correction feels obvious. The second break, 3 or 4 weeks later, is where people actually stop, because by then the story is quietly changed. It is no longer "I missed a day." It is "this always happens to me." That sentence is the thing that ends habits, not the missed session. So write the protocol once and run it every time without deciding. That is the entire point of a protocol. On a bad day, you should not be reasoning. You should be following something you wrote when you were thinking clearly. 5th build point. Write your return action, the exact floor-level thing you do the day after a miss. Write the deadline within 24 hours at the floor, no making up. And name the one person you will tell. That is the machine, all 5 parts. Let me put them together in one piece so you can hear the shape of it. The floor gives you a version that survives your worst day, so a bad day produces a small action instead of a 0. The trigger gives you a fixed when and where, written once, so the behavior stops competing for attention every single day. The environment closes your exits and moves the friction, so that continuing is easier than stopping, without any effort from you. The ledger gives you evidence instead of memory, so that on the day you are convinced you are failing, you can check. And the return gives you a protocol for the day something breaks, so that a missed day stays a missed day. 4 of those run every day. The 5th runs only on the day you fail, which is the day that decides whether the other 4 survive. And notice what is not in that list. Motivation is not in it. Wanting it more is not in it. Being the kind of person who does this is not in it. Every single part is something you write down or something you physically move. That is deliberate. That is the entire argument of this recording. You are not trying to become a more disciplined person. You are building an arrangement that produces the behavior of one, and the identity follows the behavior rather than the other way around. You've now got the whole system. And if you want something to explore after this, the free Psychology Archive reading list is in the description. 25 books selected for the ideas that can change how you think, work, and decide. Take it whenever you're ready. For now, keep running the system. Now, having built it, you have to run it. And running it has a shape that almost nobody warns you about. There are 2 specific weeks where the overwhelming majority of people stop, and knowing they are coming is most of what it takes to get through them. Session 9. Session 9. The first 60 days. Week 1 will go well, and it means almost nothing. Novelty is doing the work. Novelty is not a system, and it does not renew. So do not draw any conclusions from week 1 in either direction. Your only job this week is to hit the floor every single day, not the ceiling. The floor. And here's the failure mode for week 1, which catches almost everybody. Raising the floor. It feels absurdly easy on a good day, and every instinct tells you to increase it. Do not. The floor is calibrated for the worst day of the month, and that day has not arrived yet. Week 2 is the first honest test. The novelty is gone, and something will go wrong, because something always does. Your job in week 2 is to use the floor at least once, deliberately. If a bad day comes, drop to it rather than skipping. And if no bad day has arrived by Friday, use the floor on Saturday anyway, on purpose. You need to have run that path once before you need it under real pressure. A protocol you have never executed is not a protocol. It is a note. Week 3 is where it stops feeling like anything at all. The novelty is gone, the results have not arrived, and the behavior is now just a thing you do, in silence, with no feedback of any kind. Most people read that flatness as failure. It is not. It is the point at which the behavior stops being an event and starts being infrastructure, which is exactly what you wanted, and it feels like nothing. The failure mode for week 3 is restructuring. Right around here, you will feel a strong pull to redesign the system, to change the schedule, to find a better method. Recognize it for what it is. This is self-sabotage in its most respectable costume, and it is arriving precisely because the system started working and the stakes went up. Change nothing until day 30. You decided that in advance. Follow it. Week 4, your job is simply to finish and then do a proper month review with the ledger in front of you. Count your ceilings, floors, and misses. Find your longest unbroken run and count floor days in it, because they count. Read your missed notes and look for anything that appears twice. And check your floor ratio. If you are on the floor more than a third of the time, your ceiling is too high, and you lower the ceiling. Then comes the part that nobody prepares you for. Weeks 3 through 8. I call it the boredom wall, and it is where the overwhelming majority of people stop. Notice what is happening in that stretch. The behavior has become manageable. You are not straining. But the results are still invisible. The novelty is long gone, and nobody has noticed anything. So you are paying a cost every day and receiving nothing back. That is not difficulty. That is boredom, and boredom is much harder to survive than difficulty. Difficulty at least feels meaningful while it is happening. There is a story in it. Boredom offers nothing to push against. Just a Tuesday that looks exactly like the last one. Boredom rarely produces a decision to quit. It produces 4 disguises, and you should be able to name all of them on sight. The first is the upgrade. A sudden conviction that a better method exists. Research feels productive and risks nothing, which is exactly why it appears now and not in week 1. The second is the expansion. Adding 3 more habits. Novelty restored, load tripled, and now the original habit is competing with 4 others for the same slot in the same day. The third is the audit. Extended analysis of whether this is really the right goal for you. Occasionally, that question is genuine. Usually at week 5, it is avoidance. And the fourth is the reasonable exception, a completely legitimate reason to skip. And it is legitimate, which is precisely what makes it effective. So how do you get through it? 4 things. Decide now, while you are not bored, that nothing changes for 60 days. No method changes, no additions, no restructuring. When the pull arrives, you will not be deciding. You will be following a rule you already set. Move the reward to the process. You cannot make results arrive faster, but you can change what you are measuring. Stop asking, am I seeing progress, and start asking, did I run the machine today? One of those is outside your control and on a long delay. The other is available every day and always answerable. That is what the ledger is for. It is the only feedback loop that pays out during the wall. Attach something you want to the moment you are doing it. A specific album, a particular podcast, something you only get during that session. Research on pairing a wanted activity with an avoided one has shown improved attendance at the avoided one. The effects faded over time in some conditions, so treat it as a useful aid rather than a foundation. And one rule, it only exists inside the session. Use it elsewhere, and you have spent the currency. And the fourth thing, during the wall, lower the bar for what counts as a good day. A floor day is a full success, not a compromise, not a partial. You are not trying to make progress during this stretch. You are trying to still be running in 8 weeks, at which point progress becomes possible again. One last resource, and this one is different because it's not free. If what you're really trying to understand is the deeper psychological problem behind performance, why being capable, productive, and constantly pushing yourself can still leave you exhausted, that's what I explore in Performing Fine. It's the full book, and it's linked in the description if you want to go deeper. But you don't need it to use anything you've learned here. Build the engine first. Here is the only thing that has to be true. Still running on day 60, not impressive, not improving, not motivated, running. Everything good in this process happens on the other side of that date, and most people never find out because the boredom looked exactly like a reason. Session 10. Scaling, and then I will let you go. After 30 days, you can begin scaling, and this is where people destroy a machine that was finally working. The pattern is predictable. The machine runs for a month. Confidence returns, and confidence says, "This is too easy. I should be doing more." So the floor goes up, the ceiling goes up, 2 more habits get added. For about 9 days, it is excellent. Then an ordinary bad week arrives. The new floor is too big for it. There is no smaller version left, and you are back at failure point 1. Except now you also believe the method does not work. 2 rules. Rule 1. Raise the ceiling first. Leave the floor alone for another month. The ceiling is where growth happens. The floor is insurance, and insurance you have increased is insurance that stops paying out on the day you need it. Rule 2. Never raise the floor and add a habit in the same month. 1 change at a time, 30 days apart. If something breaks, you need to know which change broke it. When can you actually raise the floor? 3 conditions, and you need all 3. 30 days minimum since your last change. You hit the ceiling on 2/3 or more days last month. And you had at least 1 genuinely bad week in that period, and the floor held. That 3rd condition is the one people skip, and it matters most. An untested floor tells you nothing. You do not know whether it works until it has actually caught you. When all 3 are true, raise the floor by roughly a quarter, not double. A floor that doubled is a brand new floor with no track record, and you have no idea whether it survives a bad day. Adding a 2nd habit, not before day 60. And when you do, the new one starts at a floor so small, it is almost nothing, because you now have 2 machines competing for the same finite attention, and the older one has to keep running through the transition. 2 working engines beat 5 collapsed ones by a margin that is not close. Now, before I finish, let me give you the honest summary of where the evidence stands, because I promised that at the start, and I do not want to leave it out. The strongest thing in this recording is the if-then trigger. That is among the most replicated findings in behavior change research, and if you do nothing else, do that. Second strongest is the friction and environment work. That is extremely well established across many domains, though the size of the effect varies enormously by context. The trait self-control finding that disciplined people face fewer conflicts rather than winning more of them is solid and is held up in follow-up work. The habit formation timeline, 66 days as a median with a very wide range, comes from a single well-conducted study. The specific numbers should be held loosely. The point that matters, that it takes far longer than 21 days and varies enormously between people, is not in dispute. The self-forgiveness research is real, but the literature is smaller, and I would call it well-supported rather than settled. And the willpower fuel tank, which is probably the single most repeated idea in this entire category, failed to replicate at scale and is contested. Nothing here depends on it. I have told you all of that because you have been sold certainty before, by people who had less evidence than this and expressed more confidence. Behavioral science is not physics. Effects vary between people. Some of these findings will be revised. What I have tried to do is build on the results that have survived the most scrutiny, name the contested ones out loud, and design a machine that does not collapse if any single result turns out weaker than we currently think. That is the whole method. Now, one last thing, and it is the most important sentence in this recording. You have just listened to something about discipline that produced a feeling of progress, and that feeling is the most dangerous thing you are carrying right now. Listening is not building. A recording you finished and did not build from is worse than one you never played, because it satisfied the urge that would otherwise have made you act. You will feel sharp for about a day. Then it will fade, exactly like every motivational thing you have ever consumed, and nothing in your actual week will have changed. So do not switch this off and feel good about it. Here is what to do instead, and it takes 20 minutes. Get a single sheet of paper. Write down the 5 parts: your ceiling and your floor, with the floor small enough to be slightly embarrassing, your primary trigger and your obstacle trigger, both in if then form, both firing the floor, 3 exits you closed today, and the 1 person who knows, where your ledger lives and when your weekly review happens, and your return action for the day you miss. Then, and this is the part that actually matters, run the floor once, today. Not tomorrow morning, not Monday, today, at the smallest possible version. 5 minutes, 1 page, 1 set. Whatever your floor is. That single repetition is worth more than this entire recording. Everything in here exists only to make that 1 repetition happen again on a day when you do not feel like it. And then keep going, through the flat week, through the wall, through the day you miss, and come back at the floor without making it mean anything about who you are. Because the work that changes your life is almost never interesting. It is the same session, the same page, the same hour, done again on a day that looked identical to the one before it. And the reason so few people get there is not difficulty. It is that they needed it to feel meaningful while they were doing it, and it will not for a long time. Meaning gets assigned in retrospect, once there is enough of it stacked up to look like something. So the question was never whether you can do hard things. It is whether you can do a boring thing for longer than it makes any sense to. Start today, at the floor. If this audiobook helped you understand discipline differently, and you want to go deeper into the psychology of performance itself, the pressure, the exhaustion, the identity you build around achievement, and why being good at things can still leave you feeling like you're falling behind, that's what Performing Fine is about. It's linked in the description. Thank you for listening. Now go build the thing.